Tanjiro Kamado says goodbye to his family as they see him off. With a basket of charcoal on his back, he makes his way to the village at the bottom of the mountain. Upon arrival, the villagers happily greet him, thanking him for all his help while he sells them charcoal. With his basket empty and night approaching fast, it's time to make the trek through the snow up the mountain. At the foot, he's stopped by an elderly man who offers him lodging for the night. It's too dangerous. Doesn't he know demons hunt at night? Tanjiro is reminded of his grandmother, who spoke of demons, but assures the man his keen sense of smell will keep him safe in the snowstorm. He won't take no for an answer, however, and Tanjiro is forced to accept. He sets off up the mountain the following morning. Tanjiro notices the scent of blood as he approaches his family's home. Panicked, he rushes, only to find his worst nightmare come true. His family lay slaughtered, door ajar, blood staining the freshly fallen snow. His sister, Nezuko, is the only one that's still warm. He picks her up, intent on finding a doctor. Suddenly, Nezuko stirs, in a strange, animalistic state, clearly no longer human. They struggle and careen off a cliff into the snow below. When he comes to, Nezuko attacks him, while Tanjiro tries to get through to his sister. The malice in her eyes disappears for a moment, and she begins to cry. When a young swordsman appears, racing towards the pair, Tanjiro pushes her out of the way. The swordsman is furious and demands to know why he's protecting a demon. Tanjiro explains that it's his younger sister, but the young swordsman isn't having it. He frantically tries to convince him that there was another scent at the scene, and his sister does not eat humans. He insists that he's going to find a way to change her back, but the swordsman tells him it's irreversible. Tanjiro gets on his knees and begs him to spare her as he holds a sword to her throat. Reminded of his own family, the swordsman berates Tanjiro, telling him that being weak will just get him killed. His failure led to his sister being captured, and there's no way he'll be able to protect her. Filled with rage, Tanjiro gets up and launches a frontal attack. He throws a stone at the swordsman and rushes directly towards him with his hatchet, but the swordsman knocks him unconscious before he can get in for a hit. But the hatchet is gone. Where? Suddenly, the hatchet becomes lodged in a tree right beside the swordsman's head. Impressed that Tanjiro distracted him with the stone to get in a hit after he was unconscious, Nezuko breaks free and approaches her unconscious brother. But instead of devouring him, she turns towards the swordsman and protects him. The swordsman sheathes his sword and knocks Nezuko unconscious, deciding to spare them both. When Tanjiro wakes, he finds his sister beside him with a bamboo muzzle. The demon slayer tells him to find an old man who lives at the foot of Mount Sagiri and mention his name. He also cautions him against exposing his sister to sunlight. After the swordsman disappears, Tanjiro and his sister set off. Tanjiro procures a basket, straw, and bamboo from a farmer on the way to Mount Sagiri and fashions it into a backpack for his sister so they can travel during the day without worrying about the sun. The two stop at a temple as night approaches. As they walk up the stairs, Tanjiro catches the scent of blood and finds a demon inside, feasting on a corpse. The demon turns and attacks, defending its territory. Tanjiro barely dodges while slashing the demon's throat with his hatchet. Nezuko runs to save her brother, overcoming her desire to eat, and kicks the demon's head clean off. Believing the demon is dead, Tanjiro is surprised when its body starts healing itself, and the severed head continues talking, even growing arms. He uses his hatchet to pin the demon's head to a tree while he attacks the body and senselessly tackles it off a cliff, but his sister pulls him back before he falls. Not sure how to kill the demon, Tanjiro stands there when a masked man appears behind him and tells him he can't kill it with a knife. He waits too long, and the sun comes up, killing the demon for him. The masked man senses he might be too kind, even to kill a demon. The man introduces himself, and Tanjiro figures it's the man he was sent to find. Though he doesn't think Tanjiro has what it takes to be a demon slayer, he gives his old apprentice the benefit of the doubt and decides to test him. After running back to his home at the foot of the mountain, Orokadaki tells him that this is where the real test begins. He follows the masked man up the mountain until he stops suddenly. If Tanjiro can make it back down before sunrise, he'll agree to train him. Piece of cake, right? On his way back down, Tanjiro learns pretty quickly that the whole mountain is booby-trapped. It's going to be a lot harder than he thought. After a grueling night of avoiding traps, Tanjiro barely makes it down just in time for sunrise. Remembering Gyu's letter, Odokodaki agrees to train the boy and look after his demon sister. To begin his training, he must descend the mountain. As each descent becomes easier, the traps become deadlier until he's allowed to carry a sword, which helps but also hinders. He's not used to the extra weight. The man then teaches him how to use the sword in battle. He teaches Tanjiro a special breathing technique called total concentration breathing and promises to show him how to use all 10 forms of water breathing, which is his specialty. He practices everything the man taught him for the next 6 months, but he's only able to scratch the surface. Frustrated, Tanjiro looks up to see a boy in a fox mask appear on top of a boulder, telling him to stop whining. The boy jumps off the boulder and tells him to charge at him and laughs when Tanjiro worries that the boy only has a wooden sword. Clearly, it's more than enough. He berates Tanjiro for not learning anything. Simply repeating from memory doesn't make one a master. He needs to pound the lessons into his body so he never forgets until they become second nature. After he knocks Tanjiro unconscious, he says he's leaving the rest to a small girl who appears. When Tanjiro wakes up, the girl introduces herself as Makomo and the boy as Sabito. She stresses the importance of total concentration breathing, telling him that the only way to truly master it is to practice it until it kills him. For the next 6 months, that's exactly what he does. Well, he stops before it kills him, but he comes close. One day, Tanjiro is confident that he'll finally beat Sabito one-on-one. They both lunge at each other. It's over in an instant. Tanjiro's blade slices through Sabito's mask, revealing a smile underneath. He's finally ready. The next thing he knows, the 2 mysterious children are gone. It wasn't the mask he cut through, but the boulder. Tanjiro attributes his success to finding the opening thread. When he picks up a scent, it manifests itself as a thread that guides his blade to an opening. Odokodaki appears behind him, confessing that he thought cutting the boulder would prove impossible. He set that as a goal because he didn't want to send another student to their death in the final selection. He has nothing more to teach him, but this isn't the end of his hardships, only the beginning. Odokodaki tells Tanjiro that demons gain strength in proportion to the number of people they've eaten, with some gaining the ability to use blood demon arts. As he departs, Tanjiro tells him to say hi to the 2 children he met, which shocks Odokodaki. How could he possibly know the names of the dead? Arriving at final selection, Tanjiro is amazed by the out-of-season wisteria surrounding the mountain. A pair of twin girls explains how demons hate the flower, and as such, they're trapped on the mountain. Whoever survives among them for 7 days passes the final selection. On the first day, a demon attacks from above, only to get into an argument with another that appears, allowing Tanjiro to kill both at once. They both turn to ash. Just like Odokodaki explained, the Demon Slayer's Nichirin swords are the only thing other than the sun that can kill demons. Tanjiro picks up an awful scent, and hearing another applicant's screams, he turns to see a giant demon covered in arms chasing them. After seeing it swallow another applicant whole, Tanjiro steps in to save the other. The demon becomes enraged after asking whether they're in the same era, perceiving just how long it's been confined to the mountain. It admits that it's eaten at least 50 would-be demon slayers, including 13 of Odokodaki's students. He targets them, since it was Odokodaki who imprisoned him on the mountain 47 years prior. When the demon describes Makomo and Sabito, Tanjiro is shocked to learn they're dead, and this demon is the reason why. The demon uses his emotions against him, inciting Tanjiro to lose control and attack him while enraged. Makomo worries whether Tanjiro can win, though Sabito can't say for certain. He was the one who cut through the largest boulder. Tanjiro headbutts the demon's arm and runs along it, getting closer than the demon thought he could, though not worried. His neck is extremely thick, almost as thick as his skull. Tanjiro uses water breathing and severs the demon's head using first form water surface slash. Tanjiro approaches the demon's rapidly dissipating form, detecting a scent of sadness, and extends his hand, praying that he does not become a demon in his next life. In the fog, Tanjiro sees the souls of all the other students who weren't as lucky, finally able to rest. Over the next few days, Tanjiro tries to find a way to change his sister back, but none of the demons he asks has an answer, or is even willing to answer. After 7 days, Tanjiro finds himself back at the shrine where they began, surprised to see that only 4 survived final selection. The twins explain that there are 10 ranks. They start at the lowest, Mizunoto. They are each assigned a crow for communication. Well, 3 crows and 1 sparrow? One of the boys demands his Nichirin katana and is only angered further for having to wait 15 days for it to be forged from ore they select themselves. Meanwhile, a man receives notice from a Kasugai crow that there are 5 survivors in total. An exhausted Tanjiro drags himself back to Odo Kodaki's and finds Nezuko awake for the first time since they arrived. Odo Kodaki sees the two and embraces them. He hypothesizes that instead of eating humans, Nezuko can sleep to recover her strength. After 15 days, Tanjiro's katana is finally ready. The swordsmith is excited upon seeing his hair color, expecting to see the blade turn bright red, but he's disappointed when the blade turns black. Apparently, not much is known about the properties of black blades, which makes them a bad omen, as their users usually don't live long. After receiving his first mission, Tanjiro dons his Demon Slayer Corps uniform, a strong, lightweight fiber resistant to lesser demon fangs. Odo Kodaki hands him a box to carry Nezuko in. Arriving in the town of his first mission, Tanjiro crosses paths with Kazumi, the last person to see the latest victim alive. He takes Tanjiro to the site of his significant other's disappearance. A girl makes her way to bed in another part of town. A dark, inky spot on the floor follows her. 2 arms sprout from the floor as the spot envelops her. Tanjiro picks up the scent and rushes to find her, but the alley he's led to is empty. He stabs the ground where the scent is strongest, revealing the demon and girl lurking below the surface. Demanding to know where the other girls are only garners angry screeching from the demon. He gives the girl to Kazumi, who's shocked to find out demons exist. He remembers the last bit of information Odo Kodaki shared. The first to become a demon, over 1,000 years ago, is the only one who can create them, Muzan Kibutsuji, and may be the only one who can answer his questions. Tanjiro tries hitting the demon below the surface, but misses all its vulnerable spots. There are 3 of them, or are there? All 3 demons smell the same, and it becomes obvious that one demon split into 3. After missing again, the demon tries to grab Tanjiro. Right before it reaches him, Nezuko escapes from her box and protects him. Tanjiro continues his battle with the swamp demon. Nezuko escapes her box and rushes the clones. Hesitant at first, Tanjiro finally realizes that his sister can hold her own. He asks her to watch over the humans while he deals with the demon on their terms. He enters the swamp below the street and finds himself completely submerged. Despite his lack of footing, Tanjiro recalls that the water-breathing Form 6 is usable even without solid ground. With one fluid motion, he decimates the 2 clones, while his sister fights the 3rd above. She's taken by surprise, and when the demon thinks he has an opening, Tanjiro leaps from the swamp below, making sure the demon keeps his hands off Nezuko. Tanjiro questions the demon, but it's terror-stricken the second he mentions the name Kibutsuji. He gives Kazumi the personal effects of the victims he recovered from the swamp and asks him to get the rescued girl home safely before setting off. With barely a moment to breathe, Tanjiro's Kasugai crow shows up and directs him to Tokyo. In Tokyo, the sheer number of people overwhelms Tanjiro, who decides to go somewhere quiet to eat. Just as he's about to dig into a bowl of udon, he detects the scent present the day his family was killed. It leads him to a man with his wife and daughter. Kibutsuji masquerading as a human. While Tanjiro tries to confront him, Kibutsuji turns a passerby into a demon to distract him. Chaos and confusion ensue, and he uses the distraction to make his escape. Tanjiro is left to deal with the newly turned demon, all while processing the shock of coming face to face with his family's killer. The newly turned demon bites his wife before Tanjiro is able to gag him and pin him to the ground. Kibutsuji leaves the commotion, quickening his pace as Tanjiro calls him out. As he struggles, a woman scratches her arm, drawing blood and filling the air with a strong scent that subdues the man. Clearly a demon herself, having just performed blood arts, she introduces herself as a doctor. Meanwhile, Kibutsuji leaves his family to deal with some demon business. He's confronted in an alley and quickly dispatches both assailants, while terrifying a woman. After injecting her with his blood, her body begins to deform, and her head explodes, unable to handle the rapid transformation with that volume of his blood. He summons two of his subordinates and orders them to find the demon slayer wearing Hanafura earrings, becoming enraged as he recalls the demon slayer who nearly killed him wearing the same earrings years before. Tanjiro returns to the udon stand to apologize when he notices the young man who was accompanying the doctor earlier standing off to the side. They follow the young demon through the streets until he walks straight through a solid wall. It turns out that his blood demon arts can create illusions. They step through to find a mansion in the middle of the city, hidden from plain sight. The woman introduces herself as Tamayo and her companion Yushido. Apparently, she's the only demon besides Kibutsuji who has successfully created another. Her experiments with his blood may prove useful in reversing its effects, especially in Nezuko's case. She needs more blood samples from demons closest to Kibutsuji, the 12 Kizuki. While they converse, the two demons track them down, discovering the hidden mansion. Tanjiro agrees to collect samples for her in his travels when a tamari suddenly bursts through the wall. A barrage of them destroys the wall. One changes direction mid-air, taking Yushido's head clean off. The woman throwing the tamari notices Tanjiro's Hanafura earrings, while he tries to stop one with his sword, only to find its trajectory shift unexpectedly. She declares they're about to die at the hands of one of the 12 Kizuki. Perfect, just what the doctor ordered. Yushido rants as his head grows back, chewing Tanjiro out for not following the arrows, the invisible ones, of course. After lending Tanjiro his sight via blood demon art, giant red arrows appear out of nowhere, pointing in the direction of the projectiles, allowing Tanjiro to discern their changing trajectories. Nezuko joins the battle, attacking the demon in the tree. Disrupting his hand-eye coordination makes the arrows disappear temporarily. Tanjiro manages to lop the woman's arms off, though she regenerates incredibly fast. They decide to switch targets. Tanjiro sees the opening thread as he closes in, but it snaps as an arrow appears beneath his feet, sending him flying. Nezuko attempts to kick a tamari, but loses her footing. Tamayo rushes to her aid and gives her a serum to speed up her slow regeneration. Tanjiro finds the arrows aren't affected by his sword, but if he follows their direction with his body, he can get rid of them faster, decreasing the relative velocity. Combining this with his water-breathing forms garners him one clean shot to lop off the demon's head. He never saw it coming. He goes all out in a last-ditch effort to kill Tanjiro, who tries as many forms as possible to mitigate the damage. Though effective, he cracks a rib and breaks a leg, leaving him exhausted with one demon still alive. He crawls towards them with the hilt of his katana between his teeth. Nezuko figures out how to keep her feet attached to her legs and sends the tamari back at their pitcher, which only frustrates her further. But this creates a perfect opportunity for the doctor to get inside her head. She uses her blood demon art to manipulate her into speaking Kibutsuji's name, activating the cursed blood in her veins, which kills her from the inside. Upon inspection, it turns out that neither was one of the 12. They don't have the definitive markings on their eyes. Tanjiro hears the demon's dying thoughts and puts a tamari near her for comfort, feeling sorry for the demon in the end, especially considering Kibutsuji's cruelty. Afterwards, Nezuko now sees their new companions as family, despite Urokodaki's hypnotics. Tamayo offers to take her with them, arguing that it would probably be safer for her, but Nezuko refuses to leave her brother's side. On the way to their next mission, they run into another demon slayer. He interrupts the demon slayer's attempt to persuade a woman to marry him. The two recognize each other as fellow survivors of Final Selection, but Tanjiro initially denies knowing him. Eventually, he learns Zenitsu's name and wonders why he's so scared. Apparently, he's terrified at dying at the hands of a demon, which he feels is inevitable at this point. When they arrive at the specified location, they encounter two frightened siblings who claim that a monster kidnapped their older brother. They were attacked the night before and followed the blood trail to the mansion in the woods. Suddenly, a bloodied and beaten man flies out of the mansion's window. Tanjiro rushes to his aid, but the man dies of his injuries moments later. The ominous tapping sound that erupts from the mansion steals his attention and hardens his resolve. Tanjiro leaves Nezuko's box in the children's care and enters the mansion with Zenitsu. When he asks if he will protect him, the last thing Zenitsu wants to hear is that he'll have to fend for himself due to Tanjiro's previous injuries. Now he's even more afraid of dying at the hands of a demon. While trying to calm Zenitsu down, they are interrupted by the children entering the mansion, who were scared by the noises coming from the box. Despite Tanjiro's warnings, they insist on sticking with the demon slayers, though the group quickly becomes separated. Zenitsu tries to convince the boy that's still with him that they should leave, dragging him along as he looks for a way out. They run into an unknown swordsman wearing a boar mask, which only frightens Zenitsu even more. Tanjiro and the girl see a demon walk past the room. Drums protrude from its body, which solves the mystery surrounding the ominous rhythmic sound. Tanjiro lunges, sword in hand, but before his blade connects, the demon hits a drum, and the room begins to spin, literally. The boardsman appears, busting through the wall. Excited, he exclaims that the demon's going to fall by his hand. The boar-masked stranger launches his attack. The demon simply strikes the Tsuzumi, causing the room to flip upside down and throwing the little girl onto the ceiling. Tanjiro instructs her to hold on to the furniture, while Boar Mask uses him as a springboard, irritating him further. The demon taps the drum twice, causing the room to spin back right side up, and the girl lands on the floor, only to be stepped on by Boar Mask, who seems to be the only one enjoying the rotating rooms. Tanjiro tosses him away, angry about him harming the girl. Impressed by this feat, Boar Mask challenges Tanjiro to a fight, ignoring the threat of the demon altogether. Suddenly, the demon slayers find themselves in different parts of the mansion. Tanjiro picks up the scent of blood, unlike any that he's ever smelled before. It leads him to find the kid's older brother, who apparently has a special type of blood that makes demons stronger by several magnitudes. Elsewhere, Zenitsu and the boy walk through dark hallways when a demon suddenly attacks them. Zenitsu is too scared to fight and faints, but in his unconscious state, he slices through the demon's tongue, somehow suddenly capable and courageous. He uses thunder breathing first form without even opening his eyes to save the boy's life, only to come to and believe that the boy must have done something to defeat the demon. The drum demon mutters something about wanting to devour someone with Marechi blood, revealing that he was once lower rank 6 of the 12 Kizuki. Tanjiro leaves the children with the drum that the older brother found and goes to face the demon. He remembers his training, which gives him the confidence to push through his injuries. He detects a mold-like smell whenever the demon uses his claw attack, allowing him to anticipate and avoid the slashes. This gives Tanjiro an opening to use total concentration water breathing, 9th form, splashing water flow, turbulent, to deal a devastating blow. After collecting a blood sample from the drum demon, Tanjiro goes back to the brother and sister, and they make their way to find the exit. Tanjiro picks up the scent of blood, and they hurry outside to find Zenitsu clutching Nezuko's box while taking a beating from the boar-masked kid. He sensed a demon inside the box and is angry that he won't allow him to kill it. Zenitsu knew all along that there was a demon in the box due to his amazing hearing ability. But if Tanjiro says the box is more important than his life, it doesn't matter what's inside. Zenitsu commits to protecting it. upon arriving at the scene, Tanjiro is furious, immediately attacking the kid with the boar mask. He tries to stop the Rogue Slayer by breaking his ribs, despite the taboo against demon slayers harming one another. Fighting like an animal, the Slayer forces Tanjiro to retaliate. Eventually, he headbutts him, causing the boar mask to fall off and reveal a feminine and delicate face, despite the strong and muscular body. The Slayer introduces himself as Inosuke, who promptly loses consciousness. He wakes up a while later to find the others burying the dead near the mansion. Tanjiro's Kasugai crow then directs them to descend the mountain. Bidding the siblings farewell, the three set off. They arrive at a house bearing a Wisteria family crest, and an elderly woman helps them rest and recover. Inosuke informs them that the only reason he entered the final selection was to test his abilities on demons, and Zenitsu asks Tanjiro about his reason for carrying a demon. As Nezuko suddenly exits the box herself, Zenitsu becomes infuriated with Tanjiro for having a girl with him all this time. Zenitsu is smitten by Nezuko's beauty and chases her around, much to Tanjiro's annoyance. Inosuke sits outside listening to them, while the woman caring for them, Hisa, appears next to him and gives him clean clothes to wear while she washes his. The three are given a clean bill of health by a doctor, and shortly afterwards, Tanjiro's Kasugai crow informs them of their mission. They must head north-northeast to Mount Natagumo. Hisa sees them off by striking a Kiribi flint, telling them to live their lives with immense pride and wishing them luck in battle. The three reach Mount Natagumo, and Tanjiro detects a scent and runs off with the others in tow. They find an injured demon slayer begging for help, but he's suddenly pulled through the air back into the forest. Inosuke and Tanjiro rush after him, finding the forest covered in spiderwebs, annoying the former. Zenitsu is, of course, scared and hangs back. They find the demon slayer, who informs them that he and 10 others entered the forest. Soon after, one of them drew his sword and slashed another in the throat. To his horror, he watched his fellow corps members dismember one another, not remembering that they were brethren, as if they were puppets. An exhausted Kasugai crow informs a man in a shrine about the massacre. 2 Hashida, Giyu Tomioka and Shinobu, are sent to investigate. Meanwhile, Zenitsu sits on the road, feeling left behind by Tanjiro and Inosuke, but he's motivated to join them in the forest after remembering that Nezuko is with them. As Tanjiro, Inosuke, and the surviving demon slayer explore the mountain, they hear a strange rattling sound and see the corpses of dead demon slayers walking towards them. They realize that the corpses are being controlled by a demon manipulating the spiderwebs attached to them. Tanjiro and Inosuke tried to free them by cutting the threads, but they keep reattaching. A demon presents himself, casually strolling along threads of web among the treetops. He insists that they will not be permitted to disturb their family and departs as casually as he arrived. Inosuke uses his beast-breathing technique to locate the demon controlling the threads and finds a pale demon woman sitting on a boulder in the distance. Zenitsu enters the forest in search of Nezuko, but is exhausted after running hard into the woods. The surviving demon slayer stays behind to hold off the puppets while Inosuke and Tanjiro go after the puppet master. The demon woman is startled by a voice from behind calling her mother. The demon from earlier, Rui, asks if she will be able to kill them. Terrified, Mother initially doesn't answer Rui, but then claims that she will protect him, begging Rui not to tell Father. A living, controlled girl yells for Tanjiro to run and swings her blade at incredible speed. The threads on her body contort her arms back, breaking them at the joints, and she screams in pain, but is forced to continue her attack. Tanjiro has an idea and lures the controlled girl by running away, forcing her to chase him. He spins back around, grabs her in his arms, and uses his enhanced strength to fling her high into the branches, leaving her dangling in the air and no longer a threat. Inosuke becomes excited and wants to copy his move. He lures another demon slayer into running after him and throws him into the branches. Unable to do much with the tangled threads, Mother deems the controlled demon slayers useless and snaps their necks, to Tanjiro's horror. Tanjiro detects the sense of two demons and senses something in the distance. They encounter a giant headless demon doll controlled by the threads and weaponized with blades as its arms. Inosuke goes in to attack, but forgets about the spiders. Tanjiro jumps in front of him and blocks the puppet's attack. He then launches Inosuke, who cuts off the arms while he takes care of the legs. Inosuke lands the final blow, and then launches Tanjiro at the puppeteer just to prove he's on the same level. When Tanjiro notices the demon's fear, he uses a painless strike to decapitate her. Before she disappears, she warns him that a member of the 12 Kizuki is on the mountain. Zenitsu is still searching the forest for Nezuko. As he searches, he's pricked by something and turns around to see a demon spider with a face. In his panicked state, he flees and runs into another spider demon who tells him that he has already lost. He realizes that he's been poisoned and is slowly turning into a spider himself. He seeks refuge in a tree and has a flashback to his training days. He took refuge in a tree once back then too, and was struck by lightning, turning his hair blonde and caused his unconscious state to turn into a sort of flow state. He's only able to use the first thunder breathing technique, but was told that if he masters it, it can be incredibly powerful. In the present, in the forest, in the tree, and unable to handle his present predicament, Zenitsu passes out, only to enter his bizarre warrior fugue state. He uses thunder breathing, first form, surrounded by crackling energy, and beheads the spider demon before collapsing due to the poison's effects. He hears his master's voice telling him not to give up and repurposes his breathing technique to slow the poison's spread. Meanwhile, Tanjiro and Inosuke spot another demon, but it turns out to be a trap. When Inosuke goes to attack, a giant spider-headed demon targets him from above. The two Hashira arrive on the mountain to search for demons and fellow slayers, while Tanjiro and Inosuke face off against Father. Despite their best efforts, both of them are having a hard time cutting through his thick skin. Tanjiro decides to pin the demon under a tree he cuts down, but when he moves in to cut off its head, the demon picks up the log and sends him flying. Tanjiro tells Inosuke not to die as he's launched across the forest. Zenitsu manages to hold on long enough for one of the Hashira to find him. Tanjiro lands. He sees the small demon from before scolding his sister. Tanjiro picks up on the sense of fear and hate, telling them they have no true bond. Suddenly, another demon slayer appears, but is immediately cut to pieces by a spiderweb attack he didn't see coming. Inosuke barely holds on as he faces off with Father. Finding a second wind, he's finally able to cut off one of its hands by hammering one blade with the other. The small demon promises to kill Tanjiro slowly for denouncing his family fantasy. Meanwhile, the giant spider-headed demon sheds its skin, becoming even more powerful. Remembering his ally's words, Inosuke refuses to die, even though he's thrown around like he's nothing, and his swords break on the demon's new exoskeleton. Suddenly, the other Hashira rank catches up and defeats the demon in a single strike. The forest air clears a bit, and Tanjiro is able to sniff out the web attacks. He makes his move, but it's useless. His Nichirin sword breaks, severed as it makes contact with one of the demon's webs. Inosuke is in awe of Giyu, who's confused by the loud-mouthed boar mask-wearing kid. He refuses to duel him, despite Inosuke's persistence. If he could defeat the Hashira who beat one of the 12 Kizuki, he'd be the most powerful demon slayer. Giyu tells him that Father wasn't one of the Kizuki, not even close. Inosuke continues to run his mouth, as Giyu runs circles around him, literally tying him to a tree for his own good. Meanwhile, Zenitsu struggles to hold on, with the poison coursing through his veins. When the other Hashira finds him, the transformation is already taking place. But luckily, she specifically has an antidote for this, and injects it into his shrinking arm. Elsewhere, Tanjiro dodges the demon's attack. He blames his own inexperience for letting his sword break. He can't seem to get in close, but he refuses to concede and take back his words. The demon then goes for the kill, and uses the same web technique that took out the other demon slayer. Right before Tanjiro is reduced to cubes, Nezuko busts out and takes the attack head-on. Elder sister remarks on Nezuko's demonic aura, while Rui questions whether they are siblings, becoming furious upon discovering that despite being a demon, Nezuko still protected her human brother, a familial bond that he's become obsessed with attaining. He gives Tanjiro a choice: hand over his sister and he'll let him live. Confused as to what his motives are, Tanjiro refuses. Attempting to recreate their bond through fear completely misses the point. Tanjiro resolves to decapitate him with his broken blade, only to excite the demon as he reveals the number on his eye, the sign of the 12 Kizuki's lower rank 5. The demon uses his threads to string Nezuko up, enraging Tanjiro, who tries to slice his neck, to no avail. His skin is even tougher than his threads. Rui kicks the demon slayer as Nezuko struggles above. He tightens the threads, and Nezuko decides it's the perfect time for a nap. Tanjiro manages to slice through Rui's threads, mustering up enough rage to pull off the 10th form of his water-breathing technique, but is quickly rendered helpless by Rui's blood demon art, cutting thread cage. His life flashes before his eyes, and he remembers his father performing a ritual and stressing the importance of controlling his breathing to become Hinukami, the Shinto fire god, a special technique passed down through the generations, along with his Hanafura earrings. Tanjiro's breath changes. The flowing water turns to flame as he shifts techniques to slice through the demon's threads. Rui goes on the defensive as the reignited fury of the Slayer closes the distance. The opening thread appears, and Tanjiro ignores the others. Above, his narcoleptic sister is moved to awaken by the voice of her mother, urging her to save her brother. Her eyes snap open. Her blood wets the threads and begins to glow. The threads burst into flames. Tanjiro has his opening. The blade connects as the flames intertwine, and the demon's head is separated from its body. Tanjiro collapses from switching techniques without proper training, expecting the scent of ash, only to realize with a sense of dread that Rui isn't dead. The demon mocks his false victory. He was one step ahead the whole time. As Tanjiro reaches for his blade, he's ensnared by Rui's blood demon art, and as the threads dig into his skin, Giyu appears. He frees Tanjiro, reassuring him before using water-breathing, 11th form, Dead Calm, which does exactly what the name suggests, as Giyu calmly executes the clueless demon. Meanwhile, elder sister remembers being chased by demon slayers, only to be saved by Rui. She goes through an initiation where she consumes Rui's blood, joining his family. Sister complains about the sham of a family, shares her plan to escape, and invites her along. Rui catches them and kills sister, betrayed by the same demon who's now running right into a demon slayer. She captures him in a cocoon. Shinobu materializes behind her, toying with the demon, before using her own insect breathing technique combined with a needle-like sword laced with poison to kill her, as she isn't strong enough to decapitate demons. As Tanjiro reaches Nezuko, Rui's severed head falls, and he realizes that he did everything to get what they have, failing in his naive approach. Memories of the demon's past start to surface, revealing that he was once a sickly boy who chose to become a demon after meeting Muzan Kibutsuji. He murdered his parents when they decided to put him out of his misery, also planning to turn the blade on themselves, unable to go on, feeling that they failed their son. Kibutsuji comforts him, but Rui spends his life as a demon trying to recreate the broken familial bonds out of a profound sense of guilt that transcends his memory loss. Tanjiro places his hand on the remnants of the demon's clothing, picking up the scent of unbearable grief, empathizing with the child, and allowing him to feel the touch of human warmth one last time. Giyu tells him not to waste his time, but Tanjiro demands he remove his foot from the demon's clothes. He will avenge the dead, but cannot bring himself to trample on demons who spent their lives in despair and regret. The Hashira stops when he notices Nezuko, shocked to see her alive years later. Suddenly, Shinobu appears, intent on killing Nezuko, but Giyu refuses to allow it and protects the siblings. She ignores him, opting to pursue them, and she reminds Giyu she isn't alone. The insect Hashida's apprentice catches up to them, but before she can do anything, a Kasugai crow relays orders to bring the siblings in, alive. Upon their arrival, they're greeted by the remaining Hashida, the top-ranking members of the Demon Slayer Corps, who are all curious about the Demon Slayer who has been traveling with the demon. They all have differing opinions on what to do with them, and whether they should allow Nezuko and Tanjiro to live. Tanjiro tries to explain how she hasn't fed on a human in the 2 years since she's turned. Giyu is as stoic as ever, also being on the hook for helping them. The Wind Hashida, Sanemi, especially takes issue with Nezuko being a demon and attempts to kill her. Tanjiro intervenes, pleading for Nezuko's life, and a heated argument breaks out between the two. Giyu tries to stop them, giving Tanjiro enough time to headbutt the distracted Hashida. The whole atmosphere switches in an instant. All the Hashida bow as the master of the mansion, a calm and mysterious blind man, walks out. He asks them to accept his sanction of the siblings' lives, as a letter from Orokodaki details how both he and Giyu resolve to commit seppuku if Nezuko ever hurts a human. He also points out that Tanjiro is the only one to cross paths with Kibutsuji, which is valuable intel. The group fires a barrage of questions at Tanjiro about his encounter with Kibutsuji and seems suspicious of this story. But Sanemi remains preoccupied with Nezuko's unusual condition and decides to test her to see if she poses a threat to humans. The master passively allows the test to take place. The Wind Hashida cuts himself and tries to entice Nezuko to attack him to disprove the claims. He agitates her further before opening the box despite Tanjiro's protests. Nezuko remembers Orokodaki's conditioning and refuses to attack. She had resolved to view all humans as family. The master acknowledges that some will not accept them, but they can prove themselves by defeating a 12 Kizuki. After the trial is complete, Shinobu offers to house them at the Butterfly Mansion while they recover. Just as they are escorted away, Tanjiro runs back and requests permission to headbutt the Wind Hashida, only to be promptly pinned and forced to leave. But not before the master tells him to say hi to Tamayo, surprising Tanjiro, and only creating more questions about the Demon Slayer Corps leader. They arrive at the mansion to find Zenitsu losing it on the attendants. Tanjiro remarks that he's smaller than usual. He's still under the effects of almost becoming a Spider-Man. Inosuke is oddly quiet for a change, having lost his voice and a little bit of confidence. The master meets with the Hashida to discuss the threat of demons and express his faith in them, believing he has assembled the strongest Hashidas since the feudal era. They discuss the difficulty of finding competent demon slayers and how the aggressive actions of the lower five only drew attention, helping cover Kibutsuji's tracks. The master vows to defeat him. Tanjiro and Inosuke undergo rehabilitation training to recover from their injuries. They are put through a grueling regimen that tests their physical and mental strength, with each day feeling like an eternity. When Zenitsu is well enough to join them, the head attendant, Aoi, explains 3 rehabilitation tests to him: stretching, reflex training, and full body training. Inosuke is stretched out and finds it intense. The reflex training involves throwing cups of medicated water at each other, with Shinobu's silent apprentice, Kanao, proving too quick for Tanjiro. The final test is a game of tag with Aoi and Kanao. Zenitsu excuses the 3 of them, and as soon as the boys get outside, he loses it on them, furious that they would complain about training with girls all day while he was stuck in bed. Despite his feeble attempt at privacy, the girls hear everything. Back inside, Zenitsu enjoys training a little too much. For 5 days straight, Kanao goes undefeated, and Zenitsu and Inosuke quickly lose confidence and stop going altogether. Tanjiro is determined to beat her, wondering what her secret is, though not for long, as he learns from one of the attendants that she uses total concentration breathing 24/7. That's why he can't even come close to the girl's level. Tanjiro trains hard, all day, every day. and when he's not running around like a crazy person, he's working on his total concentration breathing. One night, Shinobu appears beside him and comments on his training. She wants to entrust him with her dream of humans befriending demons. Tanjiro senses something and calls out her underlying anger. She admits it. That's her secret. She's always angry. Her sister died at the hands of demons, and despite her sister's sympathy for them, she and the other Hashira have a deep resentment towards them. But she still tries to carry on with her sister's dream. She asks Tanjiro to protect Nezuko, and his unrelenting sympathy for demons greatly reassures her. He works tirelessly to maintain his total concentration breathing throughout the day and night with the help of the attendants, determined to become stronger and beat Kanao. Inosuke and Zenitsu want to catch up, so Shinobu fills them in, and they join in. Kanao watches them, remembering her childhood. She was once a nameless girl who suffered poverty and abuse. After being sold into slavery, she met Shinobu and her elder sister Kanae, who rescued her and took her in. They noticed how she seemed emotionless, appearing to have no will of her own. Kanae came up with the idea of flipping a coin whenever she wants to make a decision on her own, something she continues to the present day. Tanjiro's crow notifies them of the arrival of their new swords, but when he goes to meet the swordsmith, he gets chewed out for having broken his swords. The apprentice swordsmith is beaming about smithing swords for his first dual wielder. That is, until Inosuke takes his brand new swords and uses a rock to create his signature notches along the blade. Tanjiro faces Kanao in a full-body training exercise and seems to be keeping up with her. He defeats her by grabbing her hand. In reflex training, he puts a cup on her head instead of splashing her with the water. This victory inspires Zenitsu and Inosuke to push themselves harder in their own training. After a final medical exam, Tanjiro asks Shinobu about Hinokami Kaguya and fire breathing, but she doesn't know much about them. She suggests he could ask the Flame Hashira. Before leaving, Shinobu tells Tanjiro that she expects great things from him. Elsewhere, in a strange liminal space created by a demon's blood art, the rest of the lower six gather before an unknown woman. She begins speaking in Kibutsuji's commanding tone. He informs them of Rui's death and his decision to get rid of the rest of them permanently. When he gets to the last member, she's ecstatic to die by his hand, prompting Kibutsuji to spare her, even giving her more of his blood. Tanjiro, Inosuke, and Zenitsu receive a new mission from their Kasugai Crow to join Kyojuro Rengoku on the Mugen train, which now reports a total of 40 missing passengers. Tanjiro meets with Kanao and thanks her for helping him with his rehabilitation. She flips a coin to make the decision to speak to him. This is the first time she's spoken. It's like she's showing another side of herself, as if she had two faces. She explains her inability to make decisions on her own. She feels as if nothing matters, least of all herself. Tanjiro suggests that she listen to her heart, but Kanao is wary of such a wager. He asks for her coin and decides that if it lands on heads, then she has to listen to her heart going forward. Kanao is worried as she can't see the coin, but when it lands on heads, she somehow knows he didn't cheat, and that's settled. He tells her that even if it landed on tails, he would have just kept on flipping it until he got heads, leaving the mostly mute at a loss for words. Tanjiro, Zenitsu, and Inosuke pass the final challenge of breaking the biggest gourd with their lungs, proving they had finally mastered total concentration. While they prepare to depart, Tanjiro notices Giyu and approaches him, unsure of how to thank him for everything he's done. The stoic Hashira commends him on mastering his breathing and states that simply killing demons is enough, before evaporating. Embarking on their new mission, the boys approach the station when they're suddenly faced with a challenge they never expected. The train lurches into motion. Inosuke is in awe of the train's speed as the others race to catch up. Once on the train, Zenitsu expresses concern for Nezuko's safety, questioning Tanjiro's decision to take her with them. Tanjiro assures him that wherever they go, he and Nezuko will be together and never be apart again. The group reminisces on their long journey together to reach this point. They meet the Flame Hashira while taking their seats, making it clear that their mission will not be easy. Rengoku's personality and mannerisms are a bit flamboyant. As the train speeds towards its destination, the group braces itself for the battle to come. Thank you for sticking until the end. Subscribe for more videos like this.